Loktar, my Horde brethren, and good day to all. It's me, Crimson KB. We have reached that glorious time where it is the day before the new expansion. So here I am to bid a fond farewell to Legion, and I have to say, for the most part, it was a job well done. So in this video, I'm going to break down a few things that just really stuck out to me with Legion, and in my opinion, were vast improvements over the last expansion, or as I like to call it, the Great Shame. And I'm going to kick it off with the overall story. The Legion is invading for what feels like the billionth time, except this time they're actually serious, I guess? Yeah. So naturally, as the champions of Azeroth, it's our job to stop it. But that's not without some tragedy, and what good is a fantasy story without some tragedy? Although, really, this is the first time that in a long time that I've actually seen Blizzard actually have the cojones to make some big altering change, and of course I am referring to the deaths of Vol'jin and Varian. Quite frankly, I applaud Blizzard for actually having the guts to go through with that, as well as some other things that have been happening recently. It certainly shook things up, and it helped lay the foundation for what's going to be happening in Battle for Azeroth. But not only that, man, these were characters that were actually really beloved, even though, in my opinion, I did think it was a little unfair to axe Vol'jin since we really didn't get to see him do anything War Chief-like. And giving Varian the axe? The guy that was the head of the Alliance since WoW Vanilla? That took some guts. I'm proud of you, Blizzard. That's not even getting into Ysera's death or even Tyrion's, which in my opinion was the most heart-wrenching. Because let's be honest, whether you're Horde or Alliance, everybody respects Tyrion Forgery. So one by one, we are fighting back the Legion in all of these different zones that have really cool history to them, in my opinion. My personal favorites were Val'sharah when we were dealing with the Nightmare, which I was so glad to finally see this. I was hoping maybe in some future WoW expansion that we would actually get to see the Nightmare, and in this one we got to see it. But I'll talk more about that one in just a minute when I start talking about the raids. Many people that I've talked to thought Stormheim was probably one of the best zones they ever did, and quite frankly, I have to agree with them on many parts. It told the story of the Vrykul really well. You got to see more of their history ingrained, which, you know, again, we didn't really get to see a whole lot of this. We saw snippets of it in Wrath, but that was about it. Then, of course, you got to include the campaign for Suramar, which was a rebellion-led story with freeing the civilians and usurping the evil leadership that was running amok and whatnot, and having tie-ins with the Legion itself. And not to mention, it was a really cool raid, but again, more on that in a moment. I thought Suramar was really good. I quite honestly could have done without the Broken Shore campaign. I mean, really all it was just us prepping to storm the Tomb of Sargeras. But, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of in-depth story to be told here. And I gotta say, for the most part, the storytelling on Argus was at best. Mostly because it was just, once again, us running down, doing errands, and coming back and turning those errands in, and that's about it. Not to mention, the stuff with Illyria Windrunner, it almost seemed like it just came the hell out of nowhere, or, you know, Blizzard just pulled this out of their butt just because why not? I mean, I was excited that we were finally going to get to see Turellian and Illyria in the game, and I gotta say, finally seeing them was kind of underwhelming. Like I said, the biggest kind of what the hell with this was just out of nowhere. Oh, okay, Illyria uses the Void. Okay. Any explanation there? Of course, in the long run, we saw that was just the lead-in for them to give us the Void Elves. Even though, personally, I wish Blizzard would just nut up and give the Alliance High Elves. That's right, Alliance. Me, a Horde player, is taking your side on this. I personally believe they should have given you High Elves. Lore-wise, that would have made way more sense instead of having to tie in that Void bullcrap, especially since probably in the future, we're going to be fighting the Void. I don't know. It's just like, we have this well-established race, and instead we got emo purple people eater elves. I don't know. Hopefully, maybe they will finally give the Alliance High Elves, because again, this has probably been one of the more demanded races, or allied race at this point, that the Alliance has been demanding, and yet for some reason they won't give our Blue Lions their blue-eyed elves. And then I really think for the storytelling right here, this was the last kind of nitpick thing was, yes, we went to Argus and we fought back the Legion and defeated them for good, but then we didn't even get to fight Sargeras. I honestly thought that that was what they were building up to, and then we didn't get to do it. Now, obviously, their excuse is, well, he's a Titan. We can't take him down. And I'm like, well, then why did you build us up to feel like gods with these artifact weapons if we're not even going to get to stab the dude in the pinky toe? But I digress. Like I said, for the most part, the overall story was better. It was better than Warlords of Draenor. Way better. And then, of course, that leads into the class alls, which I thought were very excellently done. I thought these were a wonderful, wonderful step away from what garrisons were doing. I mean, basically, we went in there, did our shit, got out. It was nice to just go in there, check in, and then leave, you know? Kind of like how a class hall should be, or a home base should be. You shouldn't have to just stay there all day. Get in, get your shit, get out. Of course, I can't talk about the class halls without talking about the class hall campaign, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say it right now. The Death Knight had the best class hall campaign, and it's not fair. It's not fair. I loved this one out of all the ones I played, and I've seen, you know, videos and read the progressions of the other one, and I still say, having read those and seen them, and then played the ones that I did play, I still say at the end of the day, the Death Knight had the best class hall campaign storyline. Of course, it all had to do with Arthas and the Scourge, and I'm being a little biased here because the Scourge and the Cult of the Damned and Arthas and Ice Crown and all of that, that is my favorite lore out of the entire franchise. I love everything that has to do with the Scourge and all that good stuff. Of course, you can't talk about the class alls without the classes themselves, and I have to say, for many of these classes, these are probably the best versions of these classes that I've ever played. To this day, Legion's version of the Arms Warrior is still the best time I have ever had playing an Arms Warrior, and that's going all the way back to Wrath when I first started playing a Warrior. I thought all three of the rogue specs were really well done. Outlaw may have been a little clunky, but it was nice to see an evolution of the old combat style, even though I missed my slice and dice for the whole freaking expansion. But the good news is Slice and Dice works really good right now in pre-patch, and I think it's going to work really good in BFA. I thought Retribution for Paladins was done extremely well, and even though I haven't tanked much with a Paladin, this was the first time that I actually felt comfortable tanking as a Paladin. I didn't get to do a whole lot with my Priest until really the very end, and naturally I immediately went Shadow Priest and never looked back. This, in my opinion, is one of the best variations of the Shadow Priest, and even though I do miss Devouring Plague to an extent, I still love what the rotation does now with the focus on the dots and building up Insanity to utilize Void form. I love that, and I hope they never move away from this. Naturally, you can't talk about the classes without talking about the artifacts, and while I'm not going to go into super specific detail about every single artifact that I played, I will have to say probably my favorite story and lore with all of the artifacts that I play with, I have to give it to the Kingslayers, because to me, the weight and the gravity and the very terrible history out of all of the artifacts, or many of them, the biggest probably had to go to the Kingslayers just because of the terrible thing that those daggers did with killing King Lane while in the hands of Garona. I loved the whispers you would get from Xalatath and us finally getting to see some lore and story about the Black Empire. And then really the only artifact that I had to nitpick was probably Stromkar. Yes, I know the story behind it having to do with Thoradin and the first human king and having to do with the history with the trolls and whatnot. All of that is well and great and cool. If I had to pick the Arms Warrior weapon, though, I would have gone with Gorehowl. You know, we could have gone back to Pandaria, where we last found it underneath, down in the vaults. We could have maybe tried to cleanse the terrible remnants of Yasharaj from it and then utilize it as the Arms Warrior. I don't know. See, there's a lot of history that we already knew about with Gorhal, with it being the weapon of Garrosh, and then of course Gromosh before him. I don't know, if I had to have picked the Arms Warrior weapon, I would have gone with Gorhal, but that's more of a nitpick and not, oh, I hate this. And there's the number one thing everybody does, and that's raiding. Now, since I play on Worm Rest Accord, obviously the options to raid aren't very high unless you're with a guild or anything like that. And I did do a few of the raids with some dedication. The one I dedicated the most time to was the Emerald Nightmare because that was the one I was the most interested in. I loved finally getting to see Xavius and fight Xavius and all that good stuff. And I thought the boss battle with him was extremely well done, and I loved a lot of the stuff that Il'gynoth whispered to us, you know, and a lot of people have taken a lot of his whispers to truth, but you have to remember, as we say in pro wrestling, a heel will lie, but a villain will tell the truth. So it makes me wonder which of those truths that Il'gynoth might have been whispering to us. Was it just an amalgamation of the old gods trying to mess with us, or were they giving us warnings and precursors to what might have been coming later? Who knows? I'll probably make another video on that, explaining my thoughts on a lot of the Il'gynoth whispers and whatnot. I thought the Nighthole was okay for the most part, and, you know, finally getting to put the axe to Gul'dan was nice. It almost felt like we were sweeping whatever remained of Warlords of Draenor under the rug. I personally thought the Trial of Valor was kind of a waste of time. Even though, like I said, I'm glad Blizzard kept constant content going at a better time frame this time. Trial of Valor almost felt like the Trial of the Crusader back in Wrath, which was, man, y'all are just wasting my damn time with this, aren't you? I thought the Tomb of Sargeras was actually pretty well, even though it kind of felt like it dragged for a while, but it was nice to finally take down Kil'jaeden, even though that raid boss fight was a pain in the ass. Not to mention, so many of the mechanics in the Tomb of Sargeras completely betrayed what we had been used to for the longest time, which was don't stand in the stupid. Well, in the tomb, it was the complete opposite. Hey, you see that big old circle on the ground where the terrible thing is about to hit you? Yeah, everybody stand in this. It's the complete opposite of what we've been doing. Then, of course, it ended with Antorus, which I have to say was a good conclusion to this expansion as the final raid. And even though, like I said, I felt a little gypped that we didn't get to take a shot at Sargeras, I thought Argus, as the Titan soul of the planet, was a decent enough boss fight. Plus, I was finally getting to see the Pantheon. Was actually pretty cool. Last thing I'm going to talk about is the PvP of Legion, and I honestly have to say the PvP in Legion felt absolutely amazing. The way that so many of the classes were streamlined and things just seemed to flow a little better. I honestly felt like PvP was actually playable for the first time and we weren't just zerging crap, or that really there was any class that was specifically OP to the rest. You know, it actually felt like we had a good balance in Legion. And like I said, that's from my personal opinion. I'm not a PvP expert by any means, but just from my personal experience, I enjoyed the PvP of Legion. So those are my final thoughts on the Legion expansion, and I have to say, for the most part, bravo Blizzard. You did really good. Solid 8 out of 10 in my opinion. You had good story, the class tuning was really good, the PvP was really good, the raids were good for the most part, the artifacts were fun, the class hall progression was very engaging. I really hope you will continue this good trend of content going into Battle for Azeroth. I mean, Lord knows, you've already set the internet ablaze with controversy, but not as big as that blaze at Teldrassil. So farewell, Legion, you done good, and I will see you dudes and dudettes in Battle for Azeroth. And whether we be fighting together or against one another, you have a shway day for the Horde, baby.